Get this thing moved. Good evening, everyone. It is. Can you hear me okay? Is this? I'm trying to see if this mic is working or not. Yes. Is it working now? Okay. I did turn it on, but I got to double check though. Yeah. It is good to see each and every one of you here this evening before we get into our study. First of all, the study will be, we studied it before on Sunday. It's just kind of continuation of that, and it's the Gospel, John chapter 21. So if you wanted a few seconds to look at it while I'm just kind of talking a little bit, you can do so. But it is a blessing to see each and every one of you here tonight, and it's good to see Brother Mac and Sister Shirley here. They've been out of town, and others that were out of town and sick. It's good to have you all here with us this evening. And also, like Brother Chad had mentioned about Sister Regina, he took Regina home today. If I understand, it's like, when was her surgery again? That seems awful early to even, but anyway, so, considering, I guess, a person with their surgery, say, with Sister Regina with the knee, still quite a bit of pain involved, so let's keep all of her and the others that are ill in our prayers tonight, or the rest of the days and whenever we pray. So getting back to the lesson, we did, Brother Curtis has been doing miracles, as you all know, and then and we did cover part of this miracle a few weeks ago, I think it was, maybe it was on Sunday morning, and I know there were some questions that were raised, but just so that we're kind of back on, I'll say, at the same page, so I'll just have a reader if there's somebody that would like to read it. So it's in John chapter 21, verses 1 through 14, including that 14th verse. And then we go over that. We can kind of see if you all remember what we talked about, and some of that we can kind of skim over the top. Does it seem familiar, Brother Chad, that we went over this? But anyways, so is there anybody that would like to read? Sister Lynette, yeah, please.
I have new glasses, so if I stop, you need to ask somebody else.
Okay, that's, I know the feeling. Sounds good, thank you.
After these things, Jesus showed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias, and on this wise showed he himself. There were together Simon Peter and Thomas, Didymus, and Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, and the sons of Zebedee, and two other of his disciples. Simon Peter said unto them, I go a-fishing. They say unto him, we also go with thee. They went forth and entered into a ship immediately, and that night they caught nothing. But when the morning was now come, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples knew not that it was Jesus. Then Jesus said unto them, Children, have ye any meat? They answered him, No. And he said unto them, Cast the net on the right side of the ship, and ye shall find. They cast therefore, and now they were not able to draw it for the multitude of fishes. Therefore that disciple whom Jesus loved saith unto Peter, It is the Lord. Now when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he girt his fisher's coat unto him, for he was naked, and did cast himself into the sea. And the other disciples came in a little ship, for they were not far from land, but as it were 200 cubits, dragging the net with the fishes. As soon then as they were come to land, they saw a fire of coals there, and a fish laid thereon, and bread. Jesus said unto them, Bring of the fish which ye have now caught. Simon Peter went up and drew the net to land full of great fishes, 153. And for all there were so many, yet was not the net broken. Jesus saith unto them, Come and dine. And none of the disciples durst ask him, Who art thou? Knowing that it was the Lord. Jesus then cometh and taketh bread and giveth them, and fish likewise. This is now the third time that Jesus showed himself to his disciples after that he was risen from the dead.
Okay, thank you. So when Brother Curtis had given the one miracle, wasn't the first one, but it was the first drought of fish. They came up empty-handed. That was the time period before, and as Sister Lynette had read that last verse, Jesus Christ was raised from the dead. So this miracle that is taking place is when Jesus died, was buried, and then he was raised and left the tomb. So, and he went, I want to say it was 40 days after he had been risen from the tomb, so he's back on earth. And I want to say that verse is in Acts 1 and 3 about how many days Jesus was on the earth still performing or working miracles and other such things that his Father had asked him to do. But now kind of going back to this first verse in chapter 21, just kind of bounced around with that part, but so I'll try to go, hopefully I try to keep some things in order here, starting with verse 1. The last study that we did over the same, the Gospel of John, chapter 21, I gave some verses that explain some of that, what I just said, about the time frame and when that happened. And some of those verses, I won't read them, but I'll just, and you may have them in your notes, but, and I'll just name a few of them here. In Mark 16 and 9, the book prior, John 20, chapter 20, 1 through 18, Matthew 28, 1 through 10, and Luke 24, 34. And then, but it kind of, because some may think it's the same miracle, and that's why I'm just kind of emphasizing that, because there's a lot of similarities to the one that Curtis was talking about earlier in Luke. Was it Luke? Yeah, Luke 5. Luke 5 verses 1 through 11. But so that's why I'm just. But also another kind of a little bit of an insight on, it's a different one too, is that you see in this one, on the first verse, it says the Sea of Tiberias. And then a person may think, well, that's the Sea of Galilee. And you would not be wrong in saying that. And with the other one, let me just, Matthew, Mark, Luke. In Luke 5, it says, it says the lake at, I'm trying to think how it's pronounced, like something like Gennesaret or something like that. And it's like, so there's two different names there, but if a person were to look at the map of, say, of the Sea of Galilee, it's on that western side of the Sea of Galilee, and it's a little bit, I want to say that it's the same, I'll say it's the same place, but it's just a different area on the map of the lake, if that makes any sense. If that's, as Brother Tim says, as clear as mud on there, but because, you know, I know there's places, say on lakes. I'd say if I'm familiar with a lake in Arizona called Lake Pleasant, it wasn't too far from our house. You could be at a certain cove like Castle Creek or the Agua Fria River. They're on like kind of opposite ends, but you're still at the same lake, Lake Pleasant. And but this is still, it's a little bit different location. It seems to me that they're just kind of narrowing it down a little on the coast of that western coast of the Sea of Galilee is what it seems to me. And that's another indication it's not the same miracle. But and I didn't know if there's any other thoughts on that, but there are a lot of there's a few of the same people involved here, if you will, the disciples, and then some of them are a little different also from the other group of people that were with the disciples there, but and then just to kind of get an idea on that Sea of Galilee, I was just looking up, not that anyways, on the north to south direction, it's about 13 miles north and south, and about 7 miles wide. And then I had written down here, now you all probably know about Baden Lake, but it's about 21 miles north-south, and it's narrower, about 3 miles east and west. But trying to think of that size. So the Sea of Galilee was still a good size. And I know with that same area that they're saying the Sea of Galilee, the lake in Arizona that I'd mentioned, that lake there, this was the Sea of Galilee here, this time period here, but there's a part of the open lake where it can get really rough out there if you're doing whatever it is, fishing or skiing or whatever the case may be. So you can see how it could get pretty rough out there in this time period also, depending on weather and so on and different other factors. But anyways, and we had some questions that were asked last time we were going over that about Jesus showed himself at what place and which disciples were there. And we know that, as it says, trying to think, Miss Lynette, did yours say the Sea of Tiberias or Sea of Galilee? Okay, because I know some of them may say Galilee or what, but so that was the answer. Jesus showed him at the Sea of Tiberias, and the disciples that were there, it'll have it in the verses here, but Peter, Thomas, Nathaniel, the sons of Zebedee, which are James and John, and then what were the disciples doing there? So what were the disciples doing, and were they successful in the Sea of Tiberias? What were the disciples doing, would you say? Oh.
At that point they were fishing and they were not successful.
Right. So they weren't scuba diving? Correct. So it's pretty well, by reading it, you kind of know, Sister Lynette read it, it's like they were fishing and they were not successful at all. And it's similar to the other miracle in Luke, and I'll just ask that question, were they successful in that fishing expedition, I'll call it? No, they were not. And so there's a lot of similarities. So then, how were they successful, or were they successful, the disciples, in catching any fish? Right. Yeah, they were not successful up until the point to where Jesus here asks a question, children, in the 5th verse, have you any food? And then he told them where to cast their nets, out on the right side of the boat, and you will find some, in verse 6. So they did, so they cast, and then it was real easy for them to bring their nets in because they had about 2 or 3 fish in there. Would that be correct in saying that? That there was a few fish that when Jesus told them, cast your net on the right side of the boat and you'll find a few fish, and so they did, and they couldn't draw it in because the net got all tangled up. What was the story on, or not necessarily the miracle here? What was their nets full of all kinds of garbage at the bottom of the sea? Right. So their nets were bursting at the seams, so to speak. And how many fish were in that net? 153. And John's account, they narrowed it right down to the number, 153 large fish, I think. And then they thought the nets were going to, let's see, I'm looking at verse 11. Simon Peter went up and dragged the net to land full of large fish, 153. And although there were so many, the net was not broken. So they had to get help in bringing those nets in. But I kind of skipped a little bit. There was a little bit of a question that was asked that Sunday, and it was about, when Sister Lynette read it, what do you have, the King James Version? That's what I thought, because Steve was reading at the time, and I have the New King James, and I'm not saying they're wrong, they're right, but mine reads in the and this is what was some have asked me later on, this specific instance, that, and I remember from the study the last time. Let's see, I'll start with, and my eyes are similar in some ways with glasses, like Miss Lynette was saying. I'm wearing bifocals trying to see without trying to, but anyways, it's a long story. But so if you just bear with me a little bit on verse 7, therefore that disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, it is the Lord. Now when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, for he had removed it. And I'll just stop there. Now I want to say, Miss Lynette's version says, for he was naked. Yes, and mine's in parentheses. The part that's in parentheses on mine is, for he had removed it. So he put on his outer garment, for he had removed it. So how would you, and I remember giving some thoughts on that to those that were here, but I didn't know, and some may be different here tonight than was there on that Sunday. So that's why I bring the question up again, is that, this is terrible to ask, but was Peter completely naked in the boat? Right.
It would be like us going fishing in our underwear. In other words, we took our clothes off and just to be in our underwear fishing.
Right. And the way I remember describing it that Sunday that we went over this, is that sometimes we may feel, if I'll use the word caught off guard, somebody coming by, and we're not presentable, say, in our say regular clothes, and we're wearing or underwear, or whatever the case may be. And so that's how I kind of, whatever undergarment that Peter had on, he was wearing his undergarment, because then some have said that, well, no, it says here that he was naked. Naked and Afraid, that TV show. But but from what I can find out, that he was not. He just had his outer garment, and whatever. And I didn't study on what the inner garment consisted of, but what comes to my mind is, say, if somebody in, say, that before even, say, the 1800s, or even who knows how far, even recently than that wore certain undergarments, and then their outer garment was something that we may not even see today, as far as an outer garment, the type of clothing that people wear, so to speak. So I don't know if anyone had any other thoughts on Miss Ella. So he removed, let's see if I understood. So he probably removed his outer garment while he was on the boat or the ship, so that he could move around. Yeah. Yeah, that could be very well be with the situation, yes. And then the other thing, kind of going along with that thought, so that Peter can move around freely, is that, well, then why would you put, and I'm not saying anything against your comment, which could be the very reason, but you would almost think that if you jump in where they're fishing here, that if you wore more clothing that's bulkier, that it would be harder to get out, because I know we read it, but so Peter gets out of the boat to go see Jesus, that he wouldn't have the mobility to move around in the sea. But anyway, but either way, I can that would make sense on what your comment was saying. Yeah. So, and then also, what little bit do we know about Peter, the disciple, Simon Peter, about his personality? Well, I'll say personality, about some of the things he had done in his reactions or whatever, versus is he usually the one that would usually kind of sit back and think about things before he acts? Right. So he'd be very impulsive, and that could be with Miss Ella's comment and the other, what we're commenting on, his clothing. He was just very impulsive, as Brother Tim said, and that could be the reason for everything on his clothing. So he was maybe easier to move around on the ship, and then when he got off, he just was used to throwing his coat on, and then maybe part of his thinking too, he would be presentable because he was going to see Jesus. Might be another, and it could be all of those things together, possibly. Brother Mac, did you have? Okay, didn't.
I read sometime back that when they talk to professional fishermen, even today in that part of the world, that another reason he probably took his outer garment off was to preserve it from getting stinky fish all over it.
Yeah.
It's also a safety factor,
Right, which that would make sense too, that, which I would not doubt.
If you've never sunk a boat and went in with full clothes on, you will understand. You can't swim hardly with clothes on, shoes and, by the time I flipped, I had boots on, plus full of clothes. And the weight of the clothes and the boots, I tell you what, you went down really quick.
And I know it's no fun treading water.
Very hard with boots on.
Yeah. Just in a bathing suit trying to tread water, it's like, I'm like a lead weight, just, but,
I don't know that we could technically call it a miracle, but some of these people were professional fishermen, and they knew these bodies of water, they knew where to fish. They fished in those areas before. So the first part of the miracle might be that they didn't catch anything all night. And maybe the Lord withheld the fish going into their nets to start with, just to make a point.
right. Yeah, that's true, because sometimes it's almost like even in life, in this situation here, they're fishermen, and they know exactly where they're going. That's their trade. And but like in life today, we may know that we're going to do, this is what we've always done. Say, if it's your whatever job you might work or whatever the case, and for some reason things are different that day, and maybe we need to see God in action, or we need to do something ourselves as far as action in our lives. So, and it seems like they, as in, I know at least Brother Curtis's, when he was doing that miracle, that they were almost like, when they came up empty-handed all night, like they were not real. Well, who would be thrilled if you're a fisherman? You come up empty-handed, no fish at all. And so it's the same here, no fish. And then, but let me get to the next question here. So who stood on the shore in the morning, and did the disciples know who it was? And that's kind of going, I know it's a little up on that fourth verse, but it kind of gets also down here about what some other things that were taking place too. But who did they see on the shoreline in the morning? And the disciples, did the disciples know who it was? Right. So Jesus stood there on the shore in the morning, and did disciples know who it was?
You know, several times after Christ rose and risen, he was with his disciples and with people, and they didn't recognize him until he spoke. It seemed like until he spoke.
Right. And in some ways you can almost like say, if you know someone in your life that has passed away, and then you see them however many days later, and it's like, or you see somebody that looks like, say if it's your mom or your dad or a sibling or whatever, and it's like they look like your mom or your dad or whatever the case, it's like it would have to be a kind of almost like either it's, nah, just keep, it's not them. I know they had already passed away, so it's just hard to, the mind to kind of believe maybe the things that, right, comprehend it, right. So, and then what did Jesus ask them? And it's kind of repeated here in verse 5, and we read that. At the end of verse 5, he said, "Children, have you any food?" And they answered him, "No." You would kind of think that the way that Jesus asked that question, that they would know, he would say, "Children, have you any food?" And he wasn't asking that question in like some people may ask a question in a condescending way kind of thing. And it's like, but Jesus was not doing that by saying, "Children, have you any food today?" So I guess that was the point that I'm trying to, so that was another key thing that they should picked up on, that it was Jesus. Yes, Sister Susan?
John, don't you also think that Jesus was transformed after his resurrection, and that is part of the reason that he was not recognized by his disciples? I mean, his physical appearance had to have changed, or else they were prohibited from recognizing him.
The only, I see what you're saying. The only thing I'm kind of wondering about, it could have possibly, but then remember Thomas was asking him, oh yeah, where's the holes? Where's the, and then Jesus described where they pierced him and where, but as far as, I'm just trying to think, as far as Jesus' body, before I go, Kathy, I see your hand. Oh, go. Okay, but with his body being, now maybe they seen him when he was on the cross and how horrible that was, to see him in the blood and all that, and kind of just a mess, if you, I'll say a physical body. And then maybe the time that they seen him, well, then he was cleaned up, though, for his burial. So I don't know if that would be, I'm just kind of struggling as to say if he was transformed, I mean, for his physical body, though. Were you thinking?
His physical body had to have looked different from the way that he was on the cross, because of
Yeah.
being beaten and battered and, tormented and punched.
Right, and so I'm just trying to think if they were just, like Brother Chad's word, comprehend, they just were not comprehending that would be Jesus and looking the way, and maybe he was kind of, I'll use the word transformed, maybe by what he was wearing or something. Maybe he could have looked different to them on his clothing or something. I don't know if it's said anywhere right here in John, this 21st chapter, as far as what he was wearing. We talked about Peter, what he was wearing, but I don't think it said anything of Jesus, what he was wearing here. Sister, sure.
They're not the only ones that didn't recognize Jesus after he rose. Mary, when she went to the tomb, Jesus was standing there, and she thought he was the gardener. She didn't recognize him either.
Right, that's true, yes. So, okay, Kathy, you have,
Well, and the two disciples that were on the road to
in, yes,
because of verse 16, their eyes were restrained, so they did not know him. So I don't know.
their eyes were, what?
Restrained.
Oh, restrained, uh-huh.
I don't know if their eye, it doesn't tell us, but for some reason, they did not recognize him. Was it still early morning and it was kind of dark? Was their eyes restrained? It really doesn't come out and tell us, but they just didn't at first.
Yeah, and that's true too, like it was in the morning, and depending on the morning, it could still be dark. But then, but like Sister Shirley was saying, was it Mary? And when he was in the, or out of the, or he was shown, Mary seen him after he was in the tomb, and maybe their eyes were restrained too from, but yeah, so they're all, I mean, good, valid questions, but for some reason, I'm just trying to think if that's just how, if his body, if they did not recognize him because his body might have appeared a little bit different for some, like I think Susan was saying, for some reason, and they didn't recognize him for some reason, or if that's just how God had worked in with each person that had seen him. But Kathy.
Well, and it also makes me think about a lot of the times when he did miracles and he told the people, don't go tell anyone. Well, some of them did, but it wasn't the right time yet. It's all about the timing, because he needed time to show people that he was Jesus. And so it just wasn't the right time at this point, in this instance, I think that they were to know that that was Jesus standing there.
Right.
It's like after they saw a miracle.
Right.
I think too, in some of those cases, they realized it was Jesus once he spoke to them.
Yes.
While his appearance may have been different, either what he said or how they said it opened their eyes, and they understood that it was Christ.
Right.
We'll get to it later, but even in this passage, once they realized it was Jesus, they were still scared to ask him who he was.
Yeah. So, yeah, so to answer that completely yes or no, like Susan, you're kind of going back to your question and Sister Shirley's, it's like, as far as that answer for whatever that was brought up, if for some reason they didn't, or if there was something going on, and like Brother Tim said, were you referring to verse 12, I think about, yet none of the disciples dared ask him, who are you? And then knowing that it was the Lord, Jesus then came and took the bread and gave it to them, and likewise the fish. But what do we know that Jesus did do though? When he was on the shore. Peter jumps out, puts his outer garment on, goes to the shore. What was he doing? What did he have waiting for?
Very live human thing to do.
Yeah. Did you say feeding? Oh, eating? Yeah. Yes. So, and what did, so then the disciples went ahead then and fixed breakfast for Jesus, since he was their Lord and Savior? Or, well, we'll put it on what I'm used to, but he was, did they fix breakfast for Jesus? I'll put it that way. No. Right. Brother Tim.
Too, John, it clarifies that there was a bed of coals. The only way to have a bed of coals is he's been there for a while watching them. And his fire has burned down to a bed of coals. So he's sitting there the whole time watching what they're doing and struggling, trying to catch fish.
Right.
We're looking at Christ being recognizable. Wouldn't it have been counterproductive for Christ if he wasn't recognizable? Because that's the whole idea of being resurrected, that they could recognize he was Christ, and he had been resurrected. Well, that could be the fact that maybe God closed their eyes to the fact until he spoke.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, as far as that, going back to that question that Susan got me in a pickle here, is it, sisters? No, I'm just kidding. No. It's a tough one to answer that, because it's either what Brother Chad just said, is that, but for some reason, they just did not recognize whether it's something, I'll say the environment is dark, or in other cases, as Sister Shirley had mentioned, it wasn't this type of situation, and they didn't recognize him either, but either way, they did not recognize for whatever the case. And it just seems like that it wasn't ready at this time that Jesus was to be seen. But they did know that it was Jesus. And then, so if Jesus made them breakfast with the fish, and what else did he have? The bread. Did he ask them to do anything?
Drank some fish. Get over close to Peter, drank the whole pile of fish up.
Right,
53 of them.
right. That's a lot of fish. I don't. Anyways, it would be funny to just kind of picturing that. But so, and I don't know if they needed more. If it said in there, I didn't see the verse, but if they needed more fish to eat, or if there was, I mean, I kind of was taking it that, but I'm trying to see where I kind of got off my place. But either way, they came, and because my next one question is, what did Jesus tell the disciples to do, and did they recognize him? He said, "Come and eat breakfast." And then and the next, what did Jesus then do? And he served the disciples breakfast, but he asked them to. I thought he said to bring, like Brother Tim. Yes. So if I'm reading this, what does that tell? If I'm, say, a Christian today, we're all Christians today, say, what is God telling us? So here he's talking to his disciples, followers of Christ, which that's what we would be, we are. In other words, he's asking us to do action, do something. He's wanting us to act and not just to be inactive and just not do anything, is what I'm getting at, in our lives. Whatever that might be, as far as working in his vineyard. So, and that's what we are, is servants working in his vineyard.
He could have said fish come in. They would have done it, but he told them what to do.
Yeah.
Do what he told, what he was told, then they caught the fish.
Right.
So he was going to have faith in, he was having faith in the fact that they had the faith in putting the net over the right side.
Right. Right. And that's a good point too, yes. Brother Mac?
He had told me that earlier, in the first lesson in Luke. But I just take the fact that these were professional fishermen. They'd been out all night fishing, didn't catch anything. They're coming back to the shore. And here Jesus is there, and they just didn't recognize him at first until he opened his mouth.
Right. And that's how I was wondering too, because sometimes have you, say, been out in public and not recognized someone that you should know, but you just didn't know them, that they were, say, if you're at the store or something. And, Brother Mac?
As you know, we went to a wedding, and a young lady came up to me, and I didn't recognize her. She was at school with my daughter. I hadn't seen her in over 20 years, and they were kind of fun that I didn't remember her. But she had changed, and I hadn't seen her in 20 years. I didn't know who she was.
Yeah. It's kind of not a good feeling at times, but when we don't recognize someone that we should know. But, Kathy?
Well, Jesus offers us a free gift, but we have to do something in order to get that free gift. So everything in our life, God and Jesus expects us to put action into everything. Because without that, they're not going to just give us the free gift. Okay, just sit there and I'll just give you the free gift. You don't have to do anything. That's not how it works. And that's not how it goes. It's a free gift, but we have to do something in order to get that free gift.
You have to pay for it?
Show obedience.
Our
Right.
heart has to be right.
Right. Right.
You're not rewarded, a paycheck for doing the job.
Right.
It's a heart thing.
Right.
And you have to
Right. So, and he's still teaching that, Jesus, that is, what was just said, that we still have to work today for the Lord till we retire, till we get 65 years old. There's no, so the rest of our lives, we have to work for the Lord to get that home in heaven the best that we can. And I definitely do not know all the answers, and but we need to study daily to learn and love the Lord and have it, as Sister Lynette said, in our hearts. And hopefully, whenever that time comes, sometimes it's quicker than we think, but we don't realize it. But and we just got to be ready and keep working in His vineyard. And then the one good thing is that we know that Jesus is the judge, and He's the one that knows the heart. Whatever we'll have to give an account, whether good or bad, what we have done, and He already knows what we have done. But the good thing is that God is merciful. He loves everyone. He wants every soul to be saved, and He gives us that chance. And we just got to keep working toward that goal. And it's not easy, to serve the Lord. At times, it's very difficult. Can be difficult. But just a few thoughts about, just to kind of continue on with this miracle here. But I didn't know if there's any other closing comments. I know we're at our time, Sister.
I know we're probably bringing up more questions than
Oh,
we
that's.
have answers for, but the thing that jumps out to me in contrasting these two stories is the fact that the net didn't break in the second one. Does that represent something? The net broke in the first one. He told them they would now be fishers of men, and then the net didn't break in the second one. I don't know, maybe that's.
I know when I first read through it, I actually thought the net did break because, but Peter was. But you're right, the net did not break, but they just needed more help with what they say, either the big boat or the little boat. They had to get help to bring that net of fish in, but. So I just wonder if it's because the net was just bloated out with so many fish that kind of to help illustrate more of what that net, like on the verge, it seemed like to me to be on the verge of just popping or just bursting the net kind of thing. If you can visualize, a person can visualize that, if that's why it was said that way in this one versus the first one, because I think the first one it said the nets ripped open, and I think it was in Luke 5, the first few verses of that 5th chapter. Sometimes just one can make it work. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. But it is, there's so many similarities, but then there's a few differences, like Lynette was saying about. Did it say that net was ripped in Luke 5? I didn't know if you. I think it was. Was it 1 through 11? Yeah. Yeah, that's a boatload. And then some, yes, yes. So, but it is interesting how that is a difference in that one, that miracle and this one that went over tonight. But, and maybe that was to show part of the miracle that it didn't burst open on that net, but that Jesus was performing. But that's all I had for tonight. I didn't know if there's any others. I know we're past, it's a little past our time. I want to thank you all for your comments. I really appreciate them. And also, let's not forget the gospel invitation is offered if there's any reason for whoever might need to come forward to be baptized or to address the congregation for whatever needs. So at this time, I'll probably ring the bell. I know Chris is back there. He may not know, but and then as we stand and sing that closing song of invitation, Brother Chad. I'll wait till I do. Yeah.